was just such a beautiful thing. I think it's an amazing song, you know. Imagine, right? Imagine all the people living life in peace. Imagine that. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I know I'm not the only one. I know that. The fact that you all are here, the fact that there are so many people working for peace in our world, you know, we're not the only ones. I hope someday you'll join us and we'll be as one. Now, some people think that's just pie in the sky, you know, to think about peace and to think that that's even possible. I like what this man said about impossible. I did my little Google search looking up impossible quotes and possibility and the oneness, and this one came up for me, and I'd never heard it before. Muhammad Ali said this: impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Amen. Amen. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it is a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. Love that. Are you dealing with something in your life right now that you're wondering, am I going to get through this? This feels impossible. Right? Impossible is nothing. Impossible is nothing. There's a reason that you are here today. I challenge you to become a possibilitarian. Yes. Now, I've been using this word for a little while, and I didn't know if I make it up? Did I hear it somebody else? Like, what is that? You know, all these other denominations have these awesome one-word names, right? You're Christian, but you could be a Baptist or a Catholic or a Methodist, right? Then you could be Jewish, or you could be Muslim or Buddhist. They all have these one-word names that are so awesome. I thought, why don't we have a name like that? No, we're Centers for Spiritual Living, where we teach the science of mind, aka religious science. And by the way, that's not Christian science. And no, we're not a cult. Like, we have to explain all of that stuff, right? Whereas if we had one really cool name, like Unity has the best name ever. Unity and Unitarians, right? We're Unity. No, so we're Centers for Spiritual Living, but I think we should be called Possibilitarians. Because that's who we are. That's what we are about, is we see the possibility. That phrase was coined by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, and the way he used it was to say that no matter how dark things seem to be, or actually may be, they actually are, raise your sights and see the possibility. Always see them, for they are always there. The possibilities are always there for something greater. Ralph Waldo Emerson said it this way, and Ernest Holmes, the founder of this movement, quotes him in this thing called You, which is a phenomenal first book to read. If you are unfamiliar with what we teach here, I encourage you. I think we have a couple of copies in the bookstore. This thing called You. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, every man is a doorway through which the infinite passes to the finite. Each one of us, right? We are that portal for the infinite to express. Every man is a doorway through which the infinite passes to the finite, through which God becomes man, through which the universal becomes individual. And what do we know about God? What do we teach about God? What do we believe? Right? That God is everything, right? All present, all powerful, everywhere. And we are the conduit for that incredible power and presence to show up in this world. It's really quite an amazing thing when you think about it. You know, the idea that I'm God's stuff. What? And you're God's stuff? And each one of us, we are the eyes and ears, the voice, the body, the feet, the hands of God itself. You know, if you're waiting for someone else to fix things for you, sorry. Sorry. You know, you've got everything you need right here, right now. That power and presence that flows through you. Every possibility exists. You know, you get into the quantum physics piece of this, it's wild. You know, the idea that every single possibility already exists. We are the ones that get to decide, which possibility am I going to bring into manifestation? It's really amazing. So I wasn't born possibilitarian. Actually, I probably always was a possibilitarian, and I'm guessing that all of you were probably possibilitarians as well. I was probably about 8 or 9 in that picture. This is me with the rest of my family. And I can remember being that age and taking our first trip to Florida back in the 70s. And we stopped at NASA, at the Kennedy Space Center, and I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be the first woman astronaut. So when that it was off the table for me. I wasn't interested anymore. But I wanted to be a race car driver. I wanted to be a judge. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a doctor. It was always something like, I never really thought about being a minister. That's an interesting thing. But we come into this world, and now I look at my grandbabies, and there's so much excitement and so much possibility. And we all come into the world that way. Can you remember when you thought anything was possible? When you believed everything was possible? And then what happens, right? It's like life happens. Life happens. Stuff happens to you. I'll bring it back, that picture there. My parents, I was the oldest, then there's my brother, and my parents took in foster kids, and they adopted a couple of kids, and my dad was a police officer as well, so I was exposed pretty early on to a little bit rougher side of life maybe than what most people would see, even if I didn't actually experience some of those things, and I did experience some of those things as well. Just to know that my brother and sister were there because their parents couldn't take care of them. Because, when my sister came to us, she had hunks of hair missing, and she had a broken femur. You know what a spiral fracture is? Where you take it and snap it like that. What it takes to break someone's femur, this big bone. So that was the condition she was in when we got her. So it was rough. And then my own traumas. I don't want to get into all of the details of that, but my grandmother was mentally ill, and she lived with us, and discipline was different back in those days. So it wasn't always fun. And by the time I got to adulthood, I was carrying a big old bag of trauma and drama and all of that. So I'll fast forward you to when I found this teaching. And some of you have heard this story before. By this time, I had been a social worker, I'd been a DCF investigator, I worked for hospice as a social worker there, and then I started my own business. And I was publishing a parenting magazine. And I was looking for articles on spiritual parenting. I didn't want Jesus-y stuff. I wanted spiritual, but not religious. You all know that term, right? Spiritual? Yeah. we like it so much, we put it on a t-shirt. So spiritual, but not religious. And that led me to what was called the Oak Brook Life Enrichment Center. That's what this place was back. We're talking 15 years ago. And I was amazed. I mean, from all the possibilities I had as a kid, it felt like my possibilities got really squished down. And then I walked into this place, and there was a female minister. Oh, that's a new possibility. That was interesting. And then she spoke from the Bible, but she also mentioned something out of the Hindu text and the Buddha and, I don't know, Star Wars. It was just like, my mind was blown. What is this place? Where am I? Where we could bring all of these pieces together. And so all kinds of possibility. And what I didn't realize at the time, I felt like, my life was okay. I was moving along, and, things were good. I had my business and my kids, my husband, like everything was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. But then I got a glimpse of more possibility, that things really could be better than they were. And the truth of it was that things weren't that great. The business was rocky. It was a tough time financially. When things finally came to a head, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. I was about to lose my business. I was 100 pounds overweight. And then there were problems in our marriage. And I can say this because my husband and I are sitting here, the same man that I was married to back then. And it was a really, really dark night of the soul. Culminated that year that the 3 hurricanes blew through Florida. Do you remember that? Right? the last one was the clincher. I was on deadline and power went out, and I was worried already because we were in a tough spot with the business. So to not produce the magazine meant I wouldn't get paid, and then a huge snowball effect of things that would follow. And then my husband and I that situation came to a head during the hurricane. Now understand that my husband was a first responder. Worked with the sheriff's office. He retired some years ago after 30 years plus, 32, right? Sheriff's office. Now, when these tragedies, when these things happen, and everyone else is hunkered down with their families, what are the first responders doing? They're out there helping everybody else's family. And my family was in danger, and my family was hurting, and he had to go out and take care of other people's families. And then we were going through our thing, and it was the night of that hurricane. I said, you can stay out. Stay in your car, sleep in your car, wherever you want to sleep. I don't care if it's a storm. That's a woman scorned, right? Hell hath no fury as a woman scorned. And it was ugly. And so I remember, I've shared this before, some of you have heard this story, as I was looking out the window at this storm, and the trees are swaying. We got this great big huge pine tree in the front, and it was literally going like this. And I was just praying, please God, let it hit the house. Just take everything. Just save me and the kids. That would be good. Save us. But take the house. Give me a do-over. Take the business. I don't care if I lose everything. And I just prayed, please, just let it be over. And I woke up the next morning, and the sun was shining. And the birds were singing. And the generators were humming. And I was like, ugh! I won't say the expletive, but you know what I'm saying. You can fill in the blank. Actually, there's a term I came up with when I was in ministerial school. I called it being in the fog. When these things, these challenges happen to us, we call them opportunities for growth. Well, I'm pretty sick of opportunities for growth. Okay, so the fog stands for another effing, fill in the blank with whatever F word you choose, opportunity for growth. And so that's where I was. It was an opportunity for growth, and they come frequently. But the wonderful blessing for me was that I had found this place, and I was starting to see possibility. And I would go back in what is now my office and cry on Reverend Patty's shoulder and commiserate how awful my life was and all of these pieces falling. Everything was just falling apart. And she helped me see possibility. She also had been through her storms, as everyone does. You talk to anyone for long enough, you find out everybody's got a story. Some more dramatic, maybe some more adventurous, maybe some more painful. But we all have our lives, and we all have our stories. And she said, what it's going to take you to get out of this situation, and I know that you will, right? Because this is what she spoke. I know that you will come through the other side. And the strength that it takes you to come through all of this stuff is really going to propel you into something great. And I don't know what that is. And I didn't know either. And I really had a hard time believing it, We like to throw this phrase around here, right? Everything is perfect, whole, and complete. I know Tony spoke about that last week. How many of you were here last week to hear that talk, right? Everything is perfect, whole, and complete. And I would hear that and I would say, but you really don't know my life, because it's really not feeling perfect right now. And I'm probably a recovering perfectionist. I know what perfect is supposed to look like, and it wasn't that. And it wasn't feeling whole, and it wasn't feeling complete. But I did the work. I took the classes. I did the forgiveness work. I did the meditation. I still do it. I have to do it every day. Every day. I have to take my time out and walk and be in nature. I have to do that for my own well-being and sanity. And so that's what I did. And so here I stand today where I realize there is a point where it may not all be perfect, whole, and complete in the human realm of things, right? But as I stand here today, I realize, I know that I had to go through all of those things. All the drama, all the trauma, all the pain, all the laughter, all the betrayal, all of the love, the smiles, everything had to happen the way it did for me to be able to do what I do and stand here in this space and speak before you. This wasn't a blip on my radar. You know, when I was that possibilitarian back in the day, I thought about being a nun. Then I found out nuns couldn't get married. They couldn't have boys. So that was out. And of course, in my tradition, women were priests, so that was out too. So that was never a possibility, you know. But here I am, in this possibility, married to the same man for 30 years. 30 years. You know, and it wasn't just me that had to do forgiving. You know, he had to do a lot of it. We had to do the work together. We had to do it. And guess what? We kept the house. I sold the business. I'm 90 pounds from that 100 pounds. I'm here to tell you that it is possible. That it is possible no matter what you may be going through. There is a greater possibility and a reason for what you are going through. This guy said it this way. Y'all know who he is? Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. Right? That's where the faith is. That's where the faith comes in. You may not know how, but you don't need to know how. All you need is faith the size of a mustard seed, right? That little teeny bit of faith that says things are going to be better. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I know that it's going to be better, and I know that I'm going to learn something from this, and I know that this is part of my life path. And somehow that makes it better. It has for me. It has for me. You know, one of the things I will say about this place, and that I appreciated so very, very much about Reverend Peggy, especially for our newcomers, is that we never tell you what to believe. I will never tell you, you need to believe this, that, or the other, like I'm an authority in your life, because I'm not. I'm not. You are the authority in your life. And when Reverend Peggy would present something, and I follow the same way, what's that? I invite you. I invite you. I invite you to consider the possibility. Oh, isn't that lovely? I invite you to consider the possibility. And you can always decline an invitation, right? If it doesn't work for you, if it doesn't resonate for you, you can decline the invitation. But that's all it is an invitation. So I invite you to consider the possibilities that we speak about here and try them out in your life. And I can guarantee you, from my experience and the experience of countless other people that I have talked to and people who've been on this path way before me, right, that when you work it, it works. Yes. When you work it, it works. But you gotta work it. You have to do the work. So another possibility that has come up for me recently, and again, it's one of those things where when I look back, I realize how perfectly my life situated me for where I am in the moment. All right, we're talking about creating a peace center here, right here in this location. And moving as we grow, and you see that we're growing, that we find a larger location for us, that maybe it's more accessible, better parking, like all of the things that we will vision as a community for what that next place looks like. But, peace center, where we get to teach, people, where we get to train, where we get to model these ideas of peace building, that peace begins within, right? Spiritual practices. We're starting from there. Social emotional intelligence. Last month we talked about emotional self-mastery. This month we're talking about how do we exhibit that same kind of mastery in our relationships with other people. You know, it's really good and really easy to be spiritual when you're sitting in your house all by yourself. It's another thing when you bump up against those people that somehow know where your buttons are and know where to push them.
You're peaceful, and then he comes home.
Yeah. It happens to all of us, right? And it seems like it may be something unattainable. Sometimes it just looks so big. Like, what am I thinking to even be speaking this possibility? But some of this stuff isn't even mine. I realize that I have stepped into something maybe that was laid out for me already in many ways. Martin Luther King said this: one day, we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal we seek, but that it is a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. Right? Does the end justify the means? Well, it needs to be peaceful. Peace needs to be infused throughout. Because if we do something coming from a negative place to get that positive end, it's not going to work out. It doesn't work out because the negativity is infused in that process. So we're talking about creating a peace center. You want to have a peaceful life. You come from peace. You come from peace. You see, there is no way to peace. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Peace is the way. You know, people like to think, and we could apply this in a lot of different areas, I will be so happy when, fill in the blank. I'll be happy when I lose weight. I'll be happy when I find the right person. I'll be happy when I have the right job. No. You be happy now, where you are with what you have. And that becomes your guiding force. You see, peace is the way. You can't say, I will be peaceful when everything settles down in my life. I'll be more peaceful when I have the money. I'll be peaceful when I have the job. Whatever it is, right? It just doesn't work that way. Peace is the way. When you come from that place of peace, everything you do is infused with that peace. And then frankly, it doesn't matter if you make that goal or not, because you've been in that place of peace all along and you've just enjoyed the ride. So how do we get that? How do we get to that place? Number one, you have to believe it's possible, right? You have to be that possibilitarian. Believe that it's possible. Know that peace is possible. You have to know that that peace is possible for you, right? You may look at it and think, yeah, peace is possible, but for you, right? Because you have it all together, because you have the money and the looks and the relationship and all of that you think you're missing. No, you have to know that peace is possible for you in your situation. You have to be courageous. You have to be courageous. I was at the prison. Some of you know that I've been doing work at the prison now, Marion Correctional, for 3 years. And I'm right now teaching a course, a 10-week course on social emotional intelligence and communication skills. I've got 26 guys in my class. And they're there for all kinds of offenses. Some of them are even serving life terms in prison. So I learn a lot from these gentlemen. And last week I was there to teach my class, and I got to the building where we do the class, but a guard had to let us in. So there were maybe 8-10 guys hanging outside, waiting for the guard to open the door, and I arrived, and we're just all kind of milling around. And one of the guys says to a female guard, when are you going to open the door? Something like that. Maybe he said, when are you going to open the door? I don't know. But those were the words he said. It wasn't anything more than that. And I'm not sure what happened next. All I know is that another guard came out from the kind of guard shack area. And he used that F expletive with this gentleman and kind of gave him a little shove. The guard gave the inmate a shove, right? It's a little odd. And then it kind of, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Everybody's watching now. Next thing I know, a can of pepper spray is out, and the guard is spraying this gentleman about 6 inches from this guy's face with pepper spray. Okay? I was astounded. I was astounded. Next thing, he's down on the ground. 3 other guys have pounced on him. They've opened the door and let us in, and I can't wait to get out of the scene. Now that morning, before going to the prison, I've been kind of looking at, just my life. And, you ever have those moments where you see me on stage here, I get myself ready to be here. I'm not always love and light. Just saying. I'm not always love and light. And it was one of those moments, one of those days, I wasn't feeling the love and light, and I got up in the morning, I said, God, give me a sign, am I doing the right thing? I just feel sometimes so overwhelmed. And then this thing happened at the prison. And we went inside, and I was shaken. I was kind of, my stomach turning, the guys were shaken as well. And our conversation was about the choices we make. And now, I didn't plan this ahead of time. That was what was on the agenda. We were there to talk about choices. We were there to talk about accountability, integrity, and then the ripple effect, right? So you have a choice. And we talked about this last month, right? You remember the quote? Right? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is your power to choose your response. And in your response is your freedom and your growth. And that's what we were talking about. How interesting. Right? So there was that thing, the stimulus that happened, and then there's a response. Only a lot of people, you get in those situations, it's not really a response, it's more of a reaction. Yeah. And it's a reaction that's coming from, God, I don't even know what. Fear, panic, all kinds of things, but it was ugly. It was very ugly. But we have that opportunity then to speak about that with a real life, real world example that happened right in front of us right in that moment. And we were able to de-escalate that situation. The guys could go back to their dorm and contemplate and think about their own responses to what happened. And then I came home and I thought about it. That I could keep this quiet and not rock the boat, not cause problems for myself or for the men or for the program. Or I could speak from my integrity and I could call for accountability. And that's what I did. Amen. And I was assured that the incident will be looked into. Now, from my angle, from my perspective, I've done what I needed to do. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I still get a little queasy when I think about it, the whole thing. So sometimes it takes courage to do the right thing and to stand in your integrity, to stand in peace. So we practice the presence of peace. We practice that. We're called to do that on a daily basis. And what that means is different things. We're going to talk about this over the next few weeks as we unpack this a little bit more. But number one, peace begins in here. That means that you need to be spending time every day, in some kind of spiritual practice. And if you're saying to yourself, no, I'm too busy, I don't have 5 minutes. Well, then you're right, you are way too busy and you need to take 5 minutes. You need to take that 5 minutes because that will set the tone for everything after. Right? Come from peace. Don't react. Take the time to respond between stimulus and response. Sometimes your response doesn't need to be immediate. You might want to give it a few minutes or a few hours or even a few days.
Years.
Probably not that long. But practice the presence of peace. Practice the presence. And then making peace your compass and your guide. Right? We talked about the levels of consciousness several weeks ago, where the very bottom of what anybody's feelings may be, situation is going to be shame. Shame. Then from shame we can move up to grief. Then from grief, maybe we move on to the next thing. Well, it kind of tips, the scale tips when we go from pride to courage. That's when things change from being forceful and negative to something more positive. That's when we step into our power, when we go into courage. But at the top of that scale, well, the very top is enlightenment. And very few people actually make it there, but just below that is peace. So let peace be your compass. Let peace be your guide. So in those moments where you're in an emotional situation where things may be difficult, you can look at it and say, okay, am I moving up the scale? Right? Sometimes anger is moving you up on the scale. Right? If you've been depressed, if you've been in a place of shame, anger is a much higher vibration. That's a positive move. Maybe that's where you need to be. Right? But if you've been in joy, if you've been in love, and suddenly you find yourself drop down here, right? to anger or to shame or to grief or whatever, that's where you look at your inner GPS. Which way am I moving? Which way do I want to go? And you can make your decisions consciously. But let peace be your compass and your guide. Am I at peace? And what do I need to do to get myself back to that place of peace? And that is how we practice peace. There is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Is that helpful for anyone?
Yeah.
Good. All right. And so that brings us to our affirmation. I'm going to say it by myself first, right? Peace is possible. I know it because I live it. Now I invite you to say it with me.
Peace is possible. I know it because I live it.
And so it is. And so it is.